Hello, and thanks for joining us for this special edition of the Newsfeed. I'm David Jones. We're here today to talk about the recent election and current political climate. Donald Trump announced that he will be running for president as the Republican candidate on June 16, 2015. A well-known businessman, TV personality, and entrepreneur, Trump has a net worth of over $3.7 billion, according to Forbes. Trump was announced as the GOP presidential nominee on July 19, 2016. He then began the final leg of the presidential race as he squared off against Democratic nominee and former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. After months of heated debates, it all came down to Election Day on November 8, 2016. Trump defeated Clinton with 306 electoral votes to Clinton's own 232. January 20, 2017, Donald Trump was sworn into office as the 45th President of the United States. Now that we've taken a look at Donald Trump's road to presidency, we will introduce our guest for today's show.
All right, I'm Zach Jacobs. I'm a sophomore at Virginia Tech studying ag business and political science with an emphasis in national security, and I'm representing the Republican Party here at Virginia Tech.
Hi, I'm Joe Melton. I'm a senior here at Virginia Tech studying political science. I represent Young Americans for Liberty.
Hi, I'm Ryan Wiesdock. I'm with the Green Party at Virginia Tech, and I study history and education.
My name is Jeremy Smith. I study building construction with a discipline in sustainability, as well as Arabic, and I'm a sophomore here at Virginia Tech, and I'm a part of the Young Democrats.
To start off the show, I would like to show everyone a quick clip. We are looking to get your reactions and opinions on how this makes our current president look. Now, this video is not intended to be biased, but bring about a discussion.
Nobody can do it like me. Nobody. Nobody can do it like me. Honestly.
Nobody's stronger than me.
Nobody has better toys than I do.
There's nobody bigger or better at the military than I am.
Nobody loves the Bible more than I do. Nobody builds walls better than me. Nobody's better to people with disabilities than me. Nobody's fighting for the veterans like I'm fighting for the veterans.
There's nobody that's done so much for equality as I have.
There's nobody more pro-Israel than I am. There's nobody more conservative than me.
There is nobody that respects women more than I do. Nobody would be tougher on ISIS than Donald Trump.
Nobody's ever had crowds like Trump has had.
There's nobody that understands the horror of nuclear better than me. And nobody even understands it but me. It's called devaluation. The sale of the uranium that nobody knows what it means. I know what it means.
Nobody knows more about trade than me.
Nobody knows the game better than I do.
Nobody in the history of this country has ever known so much about infrastructure as Donald Trump. I know the H-1B. I know the H-2B. Nobody knows it better than me.
Nobody knows politicians better than I do.
Nobody knows more about taxes than I do. Nobody knows more about debt than I do.
Nobody knows the system better than me.
We will now open up discussion. We will start with you, Zach. What are your reactions to the clip you just saw?
You know, it's interesting to see how the media has a play within anything that we do or anything that is portrayed throughout the media, but especially when it comes to presidential elections or, you know, even the president's time in office. I think that, you know, a lot of those clips are taken from just, you know, speeches, and it's just kind of hard to really get a feel for how Trump's policies are just from a clip like that where he's, you know, a little braggadocious. I understand that, but at the same time, you know, we've got to understand that there's a lot more to the speeches and the short clips that we've seen.
Joe?
Yeah, I mean, I can kind of see where you're coming from there. At the same time, though, I think that it's important to kind of look at a lot of his larger speeches, especially if you saw maybe the address to Congress recently, or if you saw his press conference that he did by himself. You can kind of see when you watch those full clips that he kind of tends to boil things down to either terrific or awful. And I think it's kind of disappointing that even when you try to look at his more developed pieces, that he still kind of boils things down really simplified. And it's kind of unfortunate that we have a president now that tends to conceptualize things basically like an elementary schooler. And that's kind of what I get out of that clip.
Yeah, I don't think it comes as a surprise to anyone that Trump brags and he reduces everything down to what can I do? I can fix the problem. I'm the only one that can do that. So there's just no surprise for me in the clip. And yeah, there's some issue with it's out of context, but in context, it's mostly just him leading to those points anyway. And I find it particularly humorous, the point about equality. No one's done more for equality than me, the person who was born with a silver spoon in their mouth. That one particularly I find funny.
To kind of foil what Zach said, I don't think that these things were taken out of context. I think that these are things that he said in his speeches, and he meant what he said. This idea that one guy can somehow fix all of the problems in our country is a bit ludicrous.
Okay. Thank you all so much for sharing your thoughts. We also felt that it would be beneficial to ask other Virginia Tech students about their thoughts of the presidential election and the results. Newsfeed reporter Kay Lukens has more.
I'm here at Turner on the Virginia Tech campus asking students their opinion on the most recent election. From political science majors and engineers, we have an array of different opinions and ideas. Let's find out what they have to say.
I was pretty surprised of how the election went. Like on election night, I was pretty sure Hillary was going to like run away with it, and I think a lot of the polls viewed that way as well.
I don't think anyone really expected the election to go down like that, but I feel like it's kind of like a wake-up call for people who thought like things couldn't go that way.
I wasn't really sure what to react because I was not super informed on this whole election, but overall I would say I was a bit shocked. I didn't expect Trump to win.
Honestly, when I heard who was running, I cared because there was a woman running, and then when I found out the results, I was just really disappointed in how people like supported such a person to be the president.
I was surprised about it, but I was actually happy to see that he did get elected. I knew all the odds were against him, but he did end up getting my vote.
Well, a lot of my friends have different opinions, so I usually don't like to tell everyone what I think. So I usually just keep quiet, but I was definitely pretty shocked and was not expecting that for sure.
Okay, so we're only
I didn't think what the outcome was gonna happen, but I wasn't as shocked as some people. I also didn't think the world was gonna end or anything, but everyone has their own opinion, so.
I'm Katie Lukens reporting for the Newsfeed.
Okay, guys, so now let's get your reactions to the results. What do you think everyone's feeling towards this election?
Well, the election was you know, a big deal for a lot of individuals. It was one of the most populous elections, and it really came down to the last few states there. And I stayed up and watched the election, and honestly, I was pleased. I was happy to have the opportunity to take part in that election. It was my first time voting in a presidential election, so and being able to vote for a presidential candidate that won was definitely something that was really rewarding for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with you a lot on that. I mean, it's a historic election. I think we can all agree. I also stayed up until 3, 4 in the morning watching this election unfold that night in November. I think it's definitely a shocking experience. I think a lot of Americans are still, I don't want to say reeling, but definitely still in almost a state of shock getting the election results. And let's not forget that even throughout the entire election, it was contentious. Definitely everybody was blood boiling a lot of the time. Definitely some really harsh words thrown around, and I think we're still kind of recovering from that period of volatility. So I think that, especially now that it's early in the presidency, we're going to have to really start looking at recovering from that really contentious election.
Well, from my point of view, the second they called Florida for Trump, I knew that it was over. So I got to bed a little bit earlier than that. But for me, it wasn't so much a surprise in the sense that from the polling that I was looking at, it was always plausible that he would win. It just was. He was definitively the underdog, but it was plausible. And but I was still taken back when it happened. And my response to it was mostly to join the Green Party. I decided that I wanted an actual progressive party that I knew was going to fight back against all the policies that he was going to enact. And so I joined the Greens at Virginia Tech and ended up becoming the chair because they needed one. So,
to say the least, I was confused. I felt honestly really sick to my stomach. I stayed up until, actually I stayed up until like 5 a.m. that morning because I just couldn't understand how that happened, how we got to this point, because I had always thought that I understood the United States. I'd always thought that I had a pretty good handle on what people felt and what we stood for, and it seemed like we had just elected someone who didn't stand for a single American value. I think that the things that make America great are the diversity. I mean, I come from Italian immigrants. I'm a third-generation American. If my great-grandparents were not granted amnesty after World War II, I would not be here right now. So why would we elect someone who is so xenophobic, someone who is so anti-American values, in my view? I wanted to be apolitical for a little while there. I was really down and out, but I realized that that's no way to fight. Like, you have to get back up, you have to dust yourself off, and you have to keep going, because that's what this country is built on, is persistence, perseverance, and hard work.
Hey, thank you. Now we will take a short break. When we come back, we will talk about the actions Trump has taken since being in office.
They told me a bottle couldn't dream, that I would never become a superhero. But I learned how to fly, just to come back in a new disguise and be the hero that I've always wanted to be.
Welcome back. We're here with 4 Virginia Tech students from various political organizations on campus discussing our current political climate. President Donald Trump has been in office for a little over a month. In this time, Trump has implemented 20 different actions, including nominating a Supreme Court justice, withdrawing from the Trans-Pacific Partnership, appealing the Affordable Care Act, and signing an executive action to prepare for the construction of a wall on the Mexican border. We would like to hear your thoughts on these actions. What do you think has been the most impactful decision thus far? Jeremy, we'll start with you.
Well, I definitely think that the ban on immigrants from 7 Muslim-majority countries, that was definitely the biggest hit to what I thought America was supposed to be. Really glad that the judicial system was able to shut that down, of course. But I think that comes from a really strong showing of Americans across the country saying this does not fall in line with who we are as a country. Even on Virginia Tech's campus, we're not known for being a very politically active campus, but I went to that rally where we stood in solidarity. There were 142 Virginia Tech students affected by that executive order. And I look at that and I say, how are they any less American than me? How are they any less a Hokie than I am? And I think that was probably the best thing that Trump could have done, because it revitalized the belief and passion I have in the United States to stand up for what is right. And honestly, I felt like I was in my country again. I felt like this was where I belonged. And I was really happy to see everyone come out and stand up for something that they believed in and stand up for their fellow Americans.
I'll second that point of view. But also, Trump did not repeal the Affordable Care Act. There was no executive order repealing it. What happened was the Republicans in Congress passed a budget resolution beginning that process, allowing them to repeal it when they go ahead and come up with a plan, which they don't have. Because, as most people are probably not aware, the Affordable Care Act was the initial Republican plan. It was Romney Care before it was Obamacare. He hit that home so much in the 2012 election that we just forget that now. And Trump has gone out there time and time again and said, we're going to have health care for everyone. It's going to be great. It's going to be accessible to everyone. Well, how are you going to do that if you're going to go back to the system we had before, where there were 50 million people that are uninsured? Obamacare is not great. It could be better. It could be, in my view, a universal health care system. And so there's an opportunity for significant improvement in terms of what he's done in office. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with a lot of that. I think that it's been not very long since he's been in office, just a couple months. Definitely the Muslim majority country, that visa ban, certainly something that was definitely historical, definitely something that was huge news. But I'd like to think that maybe the most impactful thing that he's done so far is elect the Supreme Court justice. And I think it was a really interesting choice on his part, just because it seemed like it was a little bit more moderate choice than we were maybe expecting. And definitely a Supreme Court justice is a super long-lasting, lifetime appointment. Obviously, it's going to be there for a long time, affecting decisions all the way down the road. So I think that I would say that is his most impactful.
Especially when he was threatening to appoint a Scalia lookalike.
And Gorsuch is a Scalia copy in a lot of ways, but I think that he's certainly a lot better, at least socially, than a lot of the justices he was talking about.
I'm going to move away from those aspects a little bit and talk about the TPP, the withdrawal from the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Coming from an agricultural major and agricultural background, that's going to be tough. It's going to be tough on the farmers. It's going to be tough on our country. It's going to possibly even create some trade diversions that we're going to have to overcome. So for me, that's probably one of the most impactful things. I don't agree with everything that Trump has done. I hope that he has a better plan in order to help ensure that agricultural trade and trade throughout the United States remains at the top of its game.
Oh, well, I'll actually disagree with that. I think the only good thing he's done since he's been in office is taken down the TPP. It was a disaster. It was going to expand copyright protections like 99 years in life. That's ridiculous for basic medicines that people need. It had no protections really for workers or for the environment built into it. And so it would have just cost jobs here, and it was just going to be a big boon for the pharmaceutical companies and for the companies that make a lot of money off of intellectual property. So I think that's the only thing he did in office that was, worth it.
And to build off of that, I mean, honestly, when we talk about rural jobs coming back to these communities, we're talking about bringing jobs back into America. A lot of these jobs, Zach, they don't actually exist anymore because of technology. I mean, if you study ag business is what you study, then you know that in the agricultural industry, the technology allows us to have exponential outputs. Like we are outputting so much more and exporting so much more than we ever dreamed that we could because of technology. But the technology essentially makes some jobs obsolete. And I think that that's what we have to look at when we talk about bringing jobs back, is we need to work on educating the workforce, getting them into these middle skill labor jobs, because that's where the deficit is we have middle skill labor. We have plenty of those jobs, but people need more than a high school education to do those jobs. And I think that's kind of what we need to be talking about more when we talk about bringing jobs back into America, is educating our people.
Okay. Good points, gentlemen, good points. Just kind of ask, do you think that the actions of Trump, given their political response, I mean, a lot of people out there are obviously upset. Do you think they're only focused towards the American agenda or towards his own personal agenda? We'll start with you.
That's a great point. Honestly, I feel that as Americans and as citizens, we should respect the presidency. You may not like the president, or you may not like who is in office, but for us as American citizens and as voting American citizens and have those rights and those freedoms, we need to respect the office itself. And I feel like that has been neglected throughout this process. The riots that are happening, destruction of property is not going to help. It's great that we have a voice and that we're allowed to have a voice. And I'm thankful that we live in a country that we are able to have that opportunity. But in all honesty, we need to respect the office and respect what the values of that office uphold in order to help our country grow.
Okay, we're just going to switch sides here just to make up for time. What do you guys think?
I mean, I want to ask you a question. Do you think that President Obama was afforded the same respect, or do you think that it's better or worse with Trump? Do you think that the American people are respecting Trump less than the American people respected President Obama?
Yeah, that's a good point. There are definitely people that disagree with every presidential candidate. No matter who's going to get in office, somebody's going to have a problem with it. But I feel that the media has definitely played more of a role in this election and in this Trump's presidency in helping or not, harming the relations that we're trying to build.
And I guess what I would add to that is, like, I see people more mad at his policies, things that he's talking about, things that he's doing. And with President Obama, it was more, I just hate him as a person. Like, I don't hate Donald Trump as a person. I dislike his policies severely because it hurts people that I love and a country that I love. So I think that that's kind of the disparity, the difference between President Obama and what we're seeing now with President Trump.
Okay, guys, that's good. Thank you for sharing your thoughts and opinions. When we come back, we will discuss everyone's hopes for the next 4 years. We're going to take another quick break, and we'll be back after this short message.
There's a shelter pet who wants to meet you. Meet one today. Visit theshelterpetproject.org. Adopt.
Welcome back to this special edition of Newsfeed. I'm David Jones. To finish up today's discussion, we wanted to ask all of you your hopes for the future. It is very uncertain with President Trump in office, and we feel like it is important to look towards the future and not just what Trump has already done. What specifically do you hope to see accomplished in President Trump's 4-year term? Ryan, we will start with you.
Well, given what he wants to do, having him accomplish nothing would be my hope. But there's a lot of things that can happen outside of what he does that is beneficial to the country as a whole, and that is getting involved, going out there, joining the protests, finding ways to do direct action without necessarily talking to your representative to get them to do it for you. And one of the ways you can do that is by joining groups like ours, the Greens at Virginia Tech. There's a lot of things we want to do around campus to push for a very progressive policy. So if that's interesting to you, I would recommend joining a group like ours to help move that agenda forward.
And I recommend the same thing that Ryan just mentioned. Joining protest marches, showing that you do care, and there's not apathy in this country, but also going within. I'm a strong believer of working within the system as well. Going to Richmond and talking to our state legislature. Your state government matters a lot more to your day-to-day life than your federal government does. But call your senators, call your congressmen, and go to D.C. They work for you. So that's the idea here. Is let's make America great again by having political efficacy be a humongous topic for these next 4 years.
Joe?
Yeah, I can definitely agree with a lot of that. Speaking to an actual policy that I hope that Trump does follow through with, one of the few that I think I do agree with is that he's spoken a little bit about simplifying government regulations, definitely consolidating a little bit of the more complex areas of government, and even things like kind of decentralizing a little bit of government, states' rights kinds of things. But I can also agree with the other side of the table here, saying that I hope that it just kind of spurs the American people to take action on things like election reform, things like just getting more involved in politics. And you can do that on campus. You can join a third party, or you can join one of the two major parties. But personally, I think Young Americans for Liberty has a really good job of being nonpartisan in things, and I think that's really important in this day and age.
You know, we, excuse me, we are the people, we are the voice, and we have the opportunities to, you know, show our opinions and push our personal agendas within policies. So definitely getting out there and lobbying to individuals. It doesn't have to be congressmen, it doesn't have to be senators. It just has to be, you know, people that share the same values or that can help you improve on those values as well. So for me, Trump, I hope that he doesn't go through with the building of the Mexican wall because that's going to really harm the agricultural industry because we use a lot of migrant workers in our industry in order to help harvest our products.
So Zach, in your opinion, what is the one thing that definitely needs to be done during this administration that hasn't already been accomplished before?
You know, the trade policies, now that we're out of the TPP, I think one thing for me is definitely finding a way to enhance trade and decrease trade deficits in order to, you know, boost our economy as well as help others out as well.
Okay, your opinion, Joe?
Yeah, I mean, I think that as far as something that hasn't been done, like I said, simplifying some regulations is one of the few things that I think he said that was a good thing. I would hope that he would do basically the opposite of what he said in his recent address to Congress. Definitely want to balance the budget. I hope that he accomplishes this, but it doesn't seem like he is going that direction. But as far as something that I think he might do, I think that hopefully we can actually get simplified tax code, simplified government regulations, and hopefully that will be his legacy, if anything.
Well, just going off of that, I'm not really sure. There are certainly some regulations that I imagine are just unnecessary, but there are a lot that are necessary. There was one that he just used an executive order on that allowed people to dump coal ash into rivers. That's not okay. That's very destructive to the environment and to those people's livelihoods, and they don't want it out in Kentucky and West Virginia. They don't like those kinds of policies because they have to live with the environmental consequences of it. So if that's what is meant by simplifying regulation, once again, I hope that does not happen.
Well, to clarify, that is actually not what I meant.
Hold on, guys, we're running low on time here. Just moving into our last segment here. Just to wrap up the show, let's have everyone go around the table, offer up one piece of advice for the students who want to be more politically active but don't know how. How would you suggest they get involved or become more educated? Joe, we'll start. Well, actually, Jeremy, we'll start with you since we didn't get your opinion.
Right. Yeah, definitely. If anything I've said makes sense with you, definitely come out, be a part of the Virginia Tech Young Democrats. We're a great organization. We're probably like 70, 80 strong at this point. Like, we get a decent turnout. We're building. We're looking at 2017, electing Democratic governor back into Virginia, getting the state legislature seats back. Currently, it is very, very lopsided. We want gerrymandering. Gerrymandering to go out the door. Definitely need some redistricting reform. Excuse me. But yeah, political efficacy. Get out there, write your congressman, call. Be politically active, please.
Okay, how does this side feel?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I definitely agree with Jeremy here. If you want to come out to any of our organizations, I think that's absolutely a great thing for you to do. Young Americans for Liberty itself is really a nonpartisan organization. We run the gambit from people who are anarchists to communists. And so we have a really awesome discussion every Thursday at 7. If you want to come out to a meeting, you can find us on Facebook. But other than that, I think that even if you don't want to join an organization on campus, just go out and try and educate yourself. Okay. Read up personally. So that's really important.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Great points. This will wrap up this edition of the Newsfeed. Big thank you to our guests for joining us today. If you have a story idea or even a talk show idea for the Newsfeed, let us know. Send us an email at thenewsfeednrb@gmail.com. And as always, you can connect with the Newsfeed on Facebook and Twitter. Thanks for watching. I'm David Jones.